Hi folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So today folks, part 3 of the Celestion and Fane comparison videos. Now in the first two videos I compared the lovely Ascension A60 here to both the AlNiCo Cream and the AlNiCo Gold. And comparing it to the Cream, we found that yes, there were a few differences between them, but they were fairly equivalent in the grand scheme of guitar speakers and how different they can sound. But comparing the A60 to the Gold in part 2, we found that the Gold had a much more pronounced mid-range than the A60. It had a much brighter, much more aggressive. Now today I'm going to be putting the A60 alongside the AlNiCo Blue, which is essentially a lower powered version of the Gold, or more accurately the Gold is a higher powered version of the Blue. So overlaying the frequency response graphs provided by Celestion for both the Gold and the Blue, we can see that the upper mid-range is fairly similar. It's a little bit different, but it's fairly similar. So I'm guessing that in today's video we're going to find a similar difference between the A60 and the Blue as we did the Gold. But the other very obvious difference between these two speakers today is the power rating. The Blue is a 15 watt speaker, the A60, as the name suggests, is a 60 watt speaker. So I'm going to be running both of these in my Cornell Romany Plus, which is a sort of 10 watt tweed champ with a 12-inch speaker type thing. So it's comfortably within the rating of the Blue, very comfortably within the rating of the A60. So it's going to be interesting to see how that power difference plays into it. Because one thing that really impressed me about the A60 when I did the initial demo of it was how good it sounded in lower powered amps. High powered speakers can sound a little bit dull and lifeless in sort of low powered amps, but the A60 sounded phenomenal in the Cornell. So it's going to be interesting to see how they compare today. So without further ado guys, let's go. we are, folks. Now, please do comment underneath to let me know what you thought of those two speakers. I love hearing your opinions in the comment sections. But as looking at the graphs at the start of the video suggested, there was a fairly big difference between those two speakers, right? Now, the first difference was kind of obviously the EQ, and if we take the frequency response graphs for the A60 in the blue and overlay them like we've done in the previous two videos, we can see pretty much what at least I was hearing today, which is that the A60 is a little bit more thumpy low down, but when it comes to the sort of mids and upper mids, the blue is much more pronounced. The A60 is a fair bit flatter in that upper mid range, and that difference is especially apparent when hitting both those speakers with a pedal that accentuates those upper mid frequencies as well, such as the Analog Man Astro tone at the end. That's quite a mid-heavy fuzz, so it really highlighted the differences in the EQ between the two speakers. Now, the second difference I was hearing, which we've heard in the previous two videos as well, but I think it was especially apparent today, was the volume difference between the two speakers. The blue sounded a fair bit louder in terms of SPL, and the sort of metering in Pro Tools confirm this, than the A60. So I think there's a few reasons why that is, and I will talk about this more in the sort of part 4 Q&A follow-up I'm going to make in a few weeks. But the first reason is the difference in power rating, because the more you push a speaker within what it can take, the more kind of compressed and alive and exciting it will sound. And of course the blue is a 15 watt speaker and we were giving it 10 watts today, so it's kind of fairly high up what it can take. With the A60 it's a 60 watt speaker and we were only giving it 10 watts of juice, so it was barely ticking over, and that can play into it a little bit. But more than that, I think the blue is a much older speaker than the A60. I've had the blue in my Cornell for a good few years and I use it a lot. The A60 I've only had for a couple of months. So it's definitely broken in, it's had way more than its 15 hours of break-in time, but it's still a much younger speaker. Over time, mechanical parts continue to loosen up, and as that happens, speakers can sound a bit louder, a bit more dynamic and a bit more exciting. So I think that could be playing into it too. But also, the blue really pushes those upper mid frequencies, and our ears and brains kind of perceive brighter sounds as being louder sounds. So I think the blue was really pushing the frequencies that make it sound louder, even though, you know, yes, it is a bit louder in terms of SPL, but I think that really kind of exaggerates the effect, because those frequencies that get right in our ear sound louder to us because our ears are more sensitive. So a speaker with a more relaxed mid-range will tend to sound a bit quieter anyway, even without a difference in power rating and a difference in age and dynamics. So I think that was playing into it too. So, as I said, there was a fairly big difference between those two speakers. There is absolutely no better or worse. To be honest, on a sort of completely personal level, I was actually preferring some of the sounds that the A60 was giving today. They were a kind of nicer sound to listen to. Whether they sit in a mix or a band as well as the blue is up for debate. Drop it in the comments underneath. But I think, you know, the A60 to me today was a kind of a nicer speaker to sit in front of the amp and listen to. The blue I thought sounded a little bit harsh in some of those applications, but that's kind of what that speaker is all about. They are very, very different speakers. You wouldn't be upset with either in the right situation. It's all down to personal preference, whether you like a bright aggressive sound, whether you like a sort of more sort of flat mid-range sound. It's completely up to you and personal preference. There's no best, they're just different speakers. So I think that kind of sums up our sort of comparison of the Fane A60 and the Celestion AlNiCo speakers. Now, as I said, I'm going to make a part 4 to this, answering any questions you might have and just talking a little bit more about my observations and possibly personal preferences of these speakers as well. So if you have any questions about any of these comparison videos, drop them underneath and I'll try to answer them in a few weeks in the part 4. But for now, that kind of sums up our comparison of the speakers. I left the Ruby out because it's a very, very different speaker. I didn't feel there was much worth comparing the A60 to that. But I hope these videos have been interesting and useful for you. So thank you for watching, folks. Please do carry on subscribing to this channel if you haven't done so. It does make a huge difference when you do that. And I will see you in the Q&A part 4 in a few weeks. Bye-bye.